Mare, hi. I'm excited to record today because we are just going to kind of riff-raff a little bit. Not like riff-raff, but we're going to riff off each other a little bit and just have a combo, a little share inside of our brains. We had like a couple topics and ideas, but I think our theme lately is community, and you guys listening are a part of our community. If you're not subscribed though, I love you, but you got to hit the subscribe because it does help us. And it makes sure that you don't miss episodes when we do come on here. But that theme of community is definitely a theme here. So, Mary, do you want to start with kind of what we were talking about yesterday and then the day before in our various voice memos back and forth to each other?
Oh gosh, yeah. Are you, so I actually wrote a couple of notes down because let me tell you guys, like the voice notes that we leave, like I feel like they could just be published podcasts in themselves, and oftentimes they're probably long enough for that. Um, you know, I wrote a couple notes here and I'm gonna just throw out a couple and then you just let me know what kind of nailing, hitting for you. So I wrote down a note that we talked about, and just so this is our conversations back and forth with each other about a gap between knowing and living. For example, you can be educated, resourced, aware of stress physiology, and we can still be blindsided by what it actually feels like in our body. And that doesn't mean that we failed. I wrote down that it's the difference between a theory and lived experience.
Man, well, you're gonna get philosophical, Sarah.
Yeah,
Uh,
well, that was one of those Sarahs I got.
so just real quick, you guys, we send each other like 40 seconds. That's rare, but roughly Merit edges closer to the 10-minute mark. I'm closer to a 4-minute mark, girly, but we podcast to each other, and then we listen when we, have a break or a walk, and we go back and forth that way a lot, personally and then professionally, and it's very tied together. And I think I made a post last week about field notes from February, and that's kind of what you just said makes me think about is we know these things and we feel them maybe to a degree, but then when we're out there in the field, in the trenches, well, life likes to remind us, and sometimes it's chosen, right? And sometimes it's not. So like chosen example, and just again, I don't want to get too like abstract, but a chosen example that I was telling Mare about of kind of this idea of like what hard feels like is I started a new running block with some 10K goals, just loose goals, no race goals. And to start the block, I did a threshold test, which is essentially you run at like an in between pace of like you're all out and like easy. It's kind of like moderate hard. It's like that edge of like, all out to like, your easy kind of pace. So what you're doing is essentially you're finding like your lactate threshold, which is essentially that hard effort pace that you could sustain for roughly like 60 minutes. If you're a runner, it's kind of like that marathon pace. Okay. So I was doing this test. So 60 minutes, I knew it was going to be hard, like physically. I have like injury history with running. So there's always like in the back of my mind, like all of that. And anyway, long story short, I'm on my run. It went so well. It was hard. It was hard mentally, it was hard physically. I finished it and I was like, my legs and lungs have not felt like this heavy in a long time. And it was a reminder though of what doing hard things feels like. And it's that mix of emotions of doubt, of fear, of maybe excitement, of being present, of not being present, of future, past, and like, like I said, the heaviness in your legs, your lungs, like, can I do it? And that's what feeling alive is, right? That is what it means to be human. And I think we like forget that, or we challenge ourselves in a container. And I think actually funny. Can I tell a story today at the gym? I was just kind of lifting next to, older gentleman. He had some disabilities, so I could see he was, just kind of taking some time, and he definitely had some balance kind of issues. And anyway, I finished my kettlebell overhead press situation and let out a grunt, and he was making all sorts of noises earlier. And he looked at me, he's like, he laughs and he goes, "Why do we do this?" And I actually said, to remember what hard feels like, right? And he laughed. And it's like, yeah, it's like this is what it is. Like it's like challenging yourself, and like, just showing yourself kind of what you're made of a little bit. Um, so that's like obviously like a chosen example, but then we have times in our life that, maybe chosen or not, are hard, and you ride those same emotions. And I think ultimately, like, if you're living, I hate this word because it's so buzzy, but like in alignment, you can come back, you can slow down to, or think about, hey, I chose to do that 60-minute threshold test, right? Like, I choose this goal, or I choose to be a part of this family, or, I choose this relationship, I choose this job. And there's going to be hard in that. And I embrace all of that, because what else are we going to do? Like, I mean, on this little spinny around the earth. Was
Yeah.
that way too philosophical? Did that
Um,
make sense?
I think it aligned so well. And, you know, you gave a really great example of the things we choose. And I do want to give an example of the things that we don't choose. Because I think it's funny because I say that, but then I come back and say, but I have made choices within that. So, for example, like, as any of our newsletter readers, number one, I'm just going to plug it now, not shamelessly, directly, because that's the vibe. If you are not subscribed to our newsletter, I highly encourage you to be. We actually recently, in the last 2 weeks, I can't believe that, we have a newsletter space on our website. So if you go to our website and you click the word newsletter, number one, as soon as you get to our website, you're going to see a pop up, and you can subscribe right there. But if you choose to X out of that pop up and you click on the word newsletter, there is a home for all past newsletters. And I apologize if this is not being like visual, because if anyone is seeing this, my camera is going to be very glitchy right now. So it's just my circumstance. But you can go into that newsletter section on our website, and not all, but most recent newsletters since we have created this space are available. You do have to subscribe to the whole thing, but I highly encourage you to go do that. So anyway, for those of our newsletter community and any of my one-on-one clients, or mentees, etc., you all kind of have the gist of my personal situation. So for those who don't know, my father, I would say his health spiraled very dramatically, like within 48 hours, from being a very self-sufficient person who is here with us 100%. I literally spoke to him on the February 12th. And then on February 14th, he was found late in the evening, which he does not drive late in the evening, at a stoplight, and he did not know where he was, who he was, where he lived, etc. Things since then have been, I'm going to say, his health has fallen off of a cliff since then, because today is March 5th. That was a situation that I can 100% say I did not choose. I did not wake up and say, gosh, golly, I hope that someone, who's in my life's health spirals. I'm not going to share too many details, but I do think it's important for people to understand context that my sister and I jumped into action to care for somebody that was not kind to us. And I think that that's the part where I want to say, in doing that, we made a choice. We made a choice to step forward because the people who we desire to be, to look out in the mirror. Would it have been wrong of us, either one of us, even one of us, to choose not to come or not to support him? It would not have been. It's a choice. But for us, we did choose to come and take over for somebody who was not kind to us. And in doing that, it was and has been very difficult, because if anybody has handled I'm going to say estate fairs, and every state is different. It's not just about supporting the person that's health is declining and being there. It's doing all the credit card stuff, going through bank statements and wills, and actually going through someone's home and bringing in contractors and real estate. Like, it is so much. And that is something that we didn't choose. We did not choose to step into, honestly, a shit show that we were pushed out of. But we chose to come and we chose to support somebody. And in doing that, to go riff off of what Sarah was saying, that did not mean that we were choosing to lose ourselves in the process. That is not something that we were going to subscribe to. And shit got messy. Like, shit got very messy. Late nights, very early mornings, sleep that I truly did want, that my body was just like, you're not going to get that. That I did not choose. But again, I made a choice to come and step into a situation. And around that, I also made some choices of, one, I had to test how far my body was willing to go. I knew in that I also had choices. I knew that I could feed myself well. And this is just an example. This is not a judgment. This is not a moral compass for anybody else. But we chose to Instacart a big haul from Publix. We chose last minute, literally walking into an environment that was not healthy for us to stay in. We had to find an establishment right then there on the spot that had a kitchen. These are choices we made. I also chose to get up every day and go to the gym, not because I have such a scarcity mindset that I thought that missing a workout, I would lose muscle, I would get fat. It's because I needed to hold on to something. And that was my choice. I didn't do it out of scarcity. I didn't do it because I was scared of becoming any of these things. I did it because I knew what I needed to hold on to. And I think, like, that's, again, like the reckoning, that we all need, and that kind of like that fuck around and find out energy. I communicated with the people in my life, with Sarah, with coaches, and said, hey, this is my capacity. And that meant adjusting the capacity. And I think within that, like Sarah said, with, her test, I truly found out how powerful I can be. And like, the lessons that I've learned over the last 2 weeks about myself, about people around me, have been amazing. Like, absolutely phenomenal. Like, I truthfully can say that I'm proud. Like Sarah, like, she's fucking proud. I'm not proud of, obviously, the declining health, but I'm proud of how I handled it. And I think that it comes down to like some other points that I wrote about. But that, I think, is a prime example, a real example, another one of things that I didn't choose for, the clusterfuck that happened within life. But I did choose to show up and control things I could.
You had a lot of choices within that situation.
Yeah.
And I think this even brings me back to one of our mentees asked about what are some off the beaten path things that you guys like to suggest or have clients do to support their nervous system, because nervous system is having a moment on social media. But it is so true, right? Like, at our basic reptilian level, we have this, autonomic, nervous system, right? And we have these states that, we ebb and kind of flow through. And that's a podcast in of itself. But, we have a podcast on calm, energy. And, this makes me just kind of think, like, circling back to all those choices that you made, Mare. And I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but you made the choice to choose yourself and the woman that you are and the woman that you want to be. And that came down to the values that you have.
Yeah.
And I know that that did not develop overnight. That developed, I think, over years. But you decided, one day, and, like you mentioned briefly, like this was somebody that there was a complicated relationship, with. And you chose through that, that no, like I am not staying in, this type of energy. And I'm not just talking about this situation, I'm talking about for your life. You decided to step into your power and who you knew you could be. So you valued yourself big time. And I think what happens back to that nervous system thing is, and why, so many, of our clients struggle, and where, they do come to us, and our power, I think, as coaches is to help somebody regulate and slow down enough to hone in with those values, or hone in, what their body really needs. Because listen to your body is so freaking ambiguous, especially when you're just jacked up nervous system wise. And we have to be in a state where we're, I'm going to say, calm enough or still enough mentally and physically, which getting to that place of stillness and calm, it's not, just lying down and meditating. It's feeding yourself.
Yeah.
Even if it's not perfect, even if it's, frozen broccoli and the Purdue chicken strips and I don't know, some almonds that you guys Instacarted, maybe that's the sort of meal. It's drinking enough water that you probably Instacarted as well.
Yeah.
It's, it's those things like that. It's showing up for, the gym, to just slog on the treadmill, to have that time to quiet your mind before going to banks and hospitals, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
Having that time is so important. And getting, if you're going through it right now and you're like, I don't even know where to begin with my health. Well, we got to get back down to kind of that basic, like, once you're there, then you have that opportunity, I think, to be, internally still enough to think about those values, right? And like really think about them. And again, this is not you think about it once on the treadmill situation. I'm talking like months, years maybe, of thinking about like, what are those values? What's important to you? Who do you want to become? And ultimately, we give space, we make choices for our values. And if we don't, we feel like shit.
Yep.
And what I think a lot of women fall into is they don't value themselves, or they lose sight of themselves, and they don't value their health.
Yeah.
In that deep way. They don't, I've been there too. Like for sure. Like, I wrote down my values and I'm like order of operations here, right? Like how can I, be that person for my family, for, my clients, if my health is a disaster, or if I'm not showing up for myself, in those small ways. And it's not about being like a dick about it, or like, being selfish or this or that. It's actually, sometimes it's the opposite. Sometimes it's, eating even though, you're not hungry, because, like for me, like one of my goals right now is supporting fertility goals and, gaining some weight with that. So like there's been choices that I have to make that are hard, and it's easy to default to just your status quo, especially when you are busy, have work things, have life things. But I have to have times where I do slow down, or practices that are integrated into my routine to help me slow down, to tap back into, again, those values. But if I don't build those into my routine, I lose track of it. And it's not just a solo mission. I think community is one of the biggest parts of all of this.
Yeah. I could not agree more. I think that, the word we talked about, like with that mentee that you mentioned, we talked about, and oh my God, I said it to you in my voice note about feeling selfish. I in that moment, I was like, I feel so selfish. I haven't asked about, this, and I haven't asked about that. But I knew that I know I know I am not selfish, but in those moments where you feel very isolated in your reality and you feel like you're kind of losing grip on the other things that again anchored you, you can feel selfish. And I think that that is where, like to your point, a lot of women taking care of themselves, especially in moments of crisis or moments where they have, kids that need them, etc., it can feel like you are being, putting yourself above others, or, despite others. And this is where I think that, like you mentioned, like creating that awareness is really important. There's 2 points that I wrote down that specifically integrate this. And so I just want to like read my notes here. I wrote choice is harder than knowledge. And I wrote knowing you can't stay in the mess is different from actually choosing to move through it. And what does that choice look like day to day? And this is not the big dramatic moment like, I've decided to do different, and like Sarah, like I'm working on fertility and now everything is gonna be perfect. It's not the big dramatic moment, but it's the small decisions that add up. And like I'm gonna say the second point in a second, but I was on a phone call with somebody yesterday who she is also, if anyone's listening, it's like, hey, she haven't realized everyone's going through something, but she is going through a hell of a something with regards to her career. Like her career has been literally like rocket shipping, right? But to the point that it's too much. She's trying to find an exit strategy with one of her businesses. And for her, I talked to her and she's such an achiever, so type A, very like us. And I had to say, hey, listen, you are going to hate this. You are going to have to accept a very small win every single week. Because if you continue to wait for everything to be at this perfect level of this week, every single day I hit macros, I hit this water, I hit X many steps, I did so many cardio sessions. I was like, you're constantly going to feel like a failure. I told her, I said, I literally need you to be able to accept, because right now this isn't happening for her. I said, you need to accept the win is you ate today and you ate 4 times today. And, she was like, and I was like, no, no, no. You need to accept, because that's not happening right now. And if you want, to meet macros and you want to be there, then we have to start here. One other point that you talked about is you said permission to not have it figured out. You can be mid-crisis and still be building something, still be showing up, in our case, for clients and mentees and family and friends, and still be learning. These things don't pause each other. That's something we talk about in our podcast.
Well, I know I'm not alone in that I am one of the women who is recovering from a fix it mindset. And fix it mindset gets shit done. I was raised with fix it mindset. And let me just tell you, I'll call her out. My mom is pretty damn powerful. And I am so blessed that I come from a background of women like that. And I think we have to be careful with it as well, because as coaches, we have to be careful with it, because not everything requires a solution. Maybe not ever.
That was one of my next points. I love you just said that.
I think just like using and running has been my running journey has been a helpful reminder of that, just getting back into it and whatnot. And then injuries and whatnot is not every niggle, not every twinge, not every pain, discomfort has to be acted on.
I love that.
And what I have learned through every time I spiral mentally is that if I don't hyperfixate on it, if I instead, play the tape through, think about my worst case scenario, right? Like, what if this is what my brain, thinks it is? What will I do? That helps me. As does thinking about the last time I spiraled and how my body eventually recovered when I slowed down, when I listened to it, when I didn't, for example, I mean, it still happens to me. Like a threshold test is freaking hard. That is a big demand on my body. I would expect some niggles afterward. I did have some niggles. Yesterday I caught myself spiraling. I caught myself saving and writing down a list of how to strengthen my peroneal tendon, how to increase my, pronation on that side, how to start untwisting my tibia, little things I could do to integrate to strengthen my glute med. Da, 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 da. And I'm like, slow your roll, girlfriend. And actually, what I did was I chose something different than what I normally choose. And I chose to do a guided meditation that actually my therapist, which I'm also a big fan of, has helped me with. And anyway, I just kind of sat there, in or lie down there, with my feet grounded in my body, just did some breathing and did kind of like just a scan and like didn't judge any of it, just asked myself like what I was feeling. And in that moment, I actually felt my hip was kind of just dull and like achy. And I'm like, here I was hyper fixating on my lower leg. And it's actually more in my low back and my glute talking to me. Huh. It it was in that moment of stillness that I was able to be like, my body is talking to me in all the ways, but when I really slow down, it talks to me maybe differently than what I had been so focused on or what I thought I needed to focus on. So there was no resolution in that. Like I didn't start a glute med program or whatever, but I just like I felt so much more at peace than I did, you know, 20 minutes prior. And that's I think, kind of what we're after. But again, it goes back to that stillness, right? Like you can't get there. And to what you said, and this is I think it was a quote. I'm want to think of the quote and get it right, but learning isn't just reading a textbook, right? Learning is taking that information and making a different choice the next time with that information. Because we can learn all day about how to support our thyroid or, how to, support ovulatory cycles, how to hit our macros, how to, get enough fiber, how to support our liver, blah, 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 blah. We can read all day long about it, but until we decide to Instacart the frozen broccoli or take a rest day, we're
Right.
not we're not learning.
Yeah.
We're honestly wasting our time.
Yep.
We're wasting our time. And life is long and life is short. So,
Yep. I agree. The last point that I wrote down kind of goes into that. It says foundations matter in crisis. And this is what we get to practice every day. I just wrote down that this is where your expertise come in. This is where your self-awareness comes in. You know, women who have rhythms, boundaries, basic self-care, non-negotiables. They move through things faster. They move through crisis smoother. And not saying crisis is not messy. Not because they're stronger than others, but because they have a foundation to fall upon.
I love that. And the last thing I'm going to say before we wrap it, especially because this is Women's Day this weekend,
Oh my gosh, that's so right.
Sunday, March 8th, what Mayor said, those kind of women, I really hope you find them. I really hope you be them because that's how you find them. And it's going to be your best friend. It's going to be, your coworker maybe. And it might be that person you just happen to talk to at Target. And the more we have those women, I mean, the more we just find ourselves. And that's what it's about. So cheers to strong women. Let us raise them, be them, and show up for them.
Oh, I love that. That's the ending. That's that.
That's the ending. And until then, keep rewriting those narratives, you guys.